Welcome back to Redbeard Gets Technical. I'm Redbeard. Let's get technical. Today we're going to be looking at the AMD Radeon RX 570. These particular cards are manufactured by MSI. These are the Armor OC cards, which are slightly overclocked. I purchased 3 of these cards as a package deal for a pretty decent price, and all 3 of the cards have been previously mined on. All 3 of these cards have been tested for functionality and were in working condition when they were sent to me. However, after the fact, one of the cards stopped working. I may make a separate video later on that card where I attempt to repair it, or I may just use the components to work on a different card. The environment that these cards came from was not exactly dirty, but wasn't clean. You can still see down in the fin stack, there's a fair bit of dust. You can see dust when you look up underneath of it. So we're going to disassemble these cards. We're going to replace the thermal pads, we're going to replace the thermal paste that's on the die set, and then we're going to put them back together. Let's get to it. Alright, so taking these cards apart is relatively simple. There are 4 screws on the back of these cards. If you're watching this from America, this is a warranty void if removed sticker. That is not enforceable and is not legal. So, we're going to remove it anyway. There are 4 screws holding this down. Once those 4 screws are removed, it just pops loose. Once you get it apart, just pull the fan cord out there. And as you can see, wow, that is dusty and dirty. But we're going to clean dusty and dirty. That is dusty and dirty and nasty. I've got 3mm pads and 1mm pads. Now, this thermal pad is actually a 6mm pad. The problem is 6mm pads at the moment are almost impossible to find without paying an ungodly amount of money that is just, frankly, not worth spending. And for what we are doing, and the purpose that this is serving, stacking 2 3mm pads on top of each other, while not ideal, and in a perfect world we would not do, is exactly what we are going to do. Get some paper towel here. And some isopropyl alcohol. Wet down the towel. And the isopropyl alcohol will loosen up and lift the thermal interface material that is on the silicon die on the graphics card. they use entirely too much thermal paste on these from the factory. Okay. Once we've done that, we're going to go ahead and pull off the heat sink for the VRMs, and we're going to replace the thermal interface material there as well. There are 2 screws that hold that in place. Wow, that thermal pad's on there good. Blow all the dust off of that. Blow as much of the dust as I can off of that. And we're going to go ahead and wipe it down a little bit too. Right now I'm cleaning any leftover residue from the thermal pads off of the back of the VRMs and memory on the card. And I'm just wiping away some dust. Okay, I think that's about as clean as I'm going to get the card. Let's focus on the cooler now. Thermal paste is off of the cooler. Now, let's see if we can't get some new thermal pads installed. Now I'm using the old thermal pad, which was decently sized, to set the size for the new thermal pad. We're going to take and strip off the protective plastic cover and then mate these 2 pieces together. And you want to start at one end and mate them all the way out to the other end in as smooth of a motion as possible, because the idea is that you don't want any air trapped in there, because air getting trapped in there is going to make a barrier to the thermal interface transfer. So any air that's in there gets squished out. And try to work the air out as best you can before continuing. So now that that's done, peel this off and place it on the memory. Quick little bit of eyeball measuring. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but the closer it is, the less waste we have. And there we go. Now that that one is applied, cut another small piece here. And another one. And those will go right there and right there. Okay, the next piece that we need to cut will cover the VRMs. I'm going to go ahead and peel the backside on this one, because we can go ahead and put that heat sink back in place. Now remember, as always, when you are dealing with applications like this, you don't want to tighten one side completely down before you get the other side started. So that's tight. Go back and retighten this side. That's good and tight. All right. So the thermal interface material on the VRMs has been replaced. The heatsink is reapplied. The thermal interface material for all of the memory pieces has been replaced. So now all that's left is a little bit of thermal paste on the die itself, and then we can reinstall the cooler. Now, there are differences in each thermal compound that you use, but by and large, unless you are doing extreme amounts of overclocking or dealing with very specific applications, thermal paste is thermal paste. So the Arctic Silver 5 that I'm using here, because I want to go ahead and use the last of it, is not going to give me any real measurable different results in the world and application that I'm using it than the MX4 that I've got laying over there that I haven't opened yet. Just a grain of rice on there. because the gap is not very big once you put the cooler on. And the mounting pressure will give you all of the spread that you need for the thermal paste. Make sure you remember to reconnect the fans. And remember, for this first round, you are just snugging them. You are not tightening them all the way down. Once you get this on, and all of them are in place, there's the last one there. Now you go back and give it just an extra little bit. Not too much. You don't want to strip the hole out. But you just want to make sure that it's nice and tight and isn't going to come loose. And there you have it. That graphics card has had the thermal interface material replaced. So let's do the next one. Alright, that one is reinstalled. While I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and pull apart the first card and get that thermal pad on the chokes. This will also be an excellent opportunity to show that the thermal paste spreads out on its own once you achieve proper mounting pressure. See the nice even coat of thermal interface material, also known as thermal paste, or some people refer to it as thermal glue, but thermal glue is an entirely different thing. Usually that is an epoxy containing metal similar to It's similar in construction to JB Weld, which has a metal component in it to help create the bond. Let's put this cooler back on. We're back up and running. See the shirt? You can get it too. Check the merchandise link in the description below. Well, YouTube, it's the next day. And I'm an idiot. Here's how. I got to looking at the card after I reassembled it, both of these cards, and the contact between the thermal pad and the heat sink just isn't there. And that's because I, like the idiot that I am, used the wrong thermal pad. I used 1mm thermal pads for the memory modules when I should have been using 1.5mm thermal pads. So, this is a 1.5mm thermal pad. We're going to take both of these cards apart, replace the component that needs to be replaced. The VRMs and the chokes appear to have good contact. So I used the correct thickness on those ones, which was 1mm. But the memory chips themselves need a 1.5mm thermal pad. So, let's put them in. Now, we don't need to completely disassemble the card this time because all we are doing is swapping out some thermal pads and putting it right back together. We won't need to change out the thermal paste because the thermal paste application was good last time. We'll verify that when we take it apart, but as long as that thermal paste application is good, there's no reason to reapply the paste, especially on a card that hasn't been plugged in and run, so the thermal paste has not had a chance to thermal cycle yet. There's one. That one's back together. As you can see, the thermal paste application on this card was good as well. Nice complete coverage. No massive amounts of excess like the factory job had. Now I am trying to save a little bit of material here. So instead of running a single strip of thermal material here, I'm actually cutting it into 3 pads that are going to cover each individual memory chip. Now that all of the pieces are on there and all of the memory modules have good coverage, let's throw the cooler back on it. And there you go. The cards are back together. This time, with the proper thermal pads. As you can see, the process was fairly straightforward and simple, and while a mistake was made regarding which thermal pad to use, it was quickly caught and corrected without much incident. Tune in next week where we'll be looking at these same two cards and loading the original gaming BIOS back on them because both of them are currently set up for mining. If you liked this video, give me a like, feel free to subscribe, that way YouTube knows that I'm doing something good, and if I'm not doing something good, leave a comment in the section below and tell me what I need to improve. Also, you can check me out on Twitch. I stream 3 nights a week. Sunday nights, I stream Call of Duty Warzone. Monday nights, I stream Battletech. And Tuesday nights, I stream really whatever I'm in the mood to stream. I hope you liked the video. If you liked the shirt, you can check the description below where there'll be a link to my merchandise store. As of right now, I only have the one design up, but hopefully that will change sometime in the near future. Thank you again for watching this episode of Redbeard Gets Technical, and we'll see you next time.